along relationship building and making phone calls, inviting reporters to coffee and maybe a beer, if that's acceptable. A few of our students live in very small towns and have expressed concern about reporters, producers not being open to that. I sort of say, hooey, if you haven't tried, then how do you know?
They don't have time.
But it's about time. So if a reporter who doesn't have time, how do you build a relationship?
Call them on the phone. Find out what they need, find out when they need it, and give them stories. Really, really read what they write, what they cover. And you know, don't give a gardening story to a sports reporter. You know, and keep in mind that a reporter who covered one story a day a couple years ago is now covering 5 stories a day or rewriting a whole lot of material. They're under phenomenal pressure. It's no fun being a reporter these days. HDNet, which has a wonderful program called World Report, weekly program, all of a sudden, Mark Cuban, who owns HDNet, laid off everybody.
Wow.
And now they're going to freelancers. The whole news business is changing, and you have to adjust your ways of reaching out to people. But do it very personally. Don't do it by email initially. Do it by telephone and make contact. And if you get a voicemail, keep trying and just leave on a voicemail and say, hey, look, I just want to talk to you about how I can give you a story. Reporters are very sympathetic to that. They're very responsive. If you don't sound like a robocall, they will call you back, and they will give you some tips. But I think you need to sound less like a PR person and more like a peer.
Very good advice. You and I were chatting earlier about the desire and the ability to manage news and to control news. What do you think about that? Is it possible?
In seminars, we get into the semantics of those words. I think that public relations companies have always said, no, you can never control news. Well, I think that's changed. I think it's changed in many respects. Look at what Huffington Post is. Huffington Post is all volunteers who just want to see their name in print, who are not getting paid, who are writing opinion pieces. You can write an opinion piece too and get in Huffington Post. You can get in the Examiner. You can get in the media is looking for material because all the media, from the New York Times to the networks, are really contracting their staffs. You know, if you go to any of the networks, Fox or CBS, they have the familiar faces on the air, but the producers often are freelance. Everybody else is an intern. And it's been cut back to such a degree that if you go in with a legitimate story, a story that has all the elements of being a story that they cover, not that you want to tell, but that they cover, and you can mold in, weave in your own messages, of course, your own angle, there's a good chance they'll go for it, particularly if you can supplement it with high-definition video, news-style news photos if it's print, and all of the resources that a reporter needs to do a story. They will take pictures from you. They will take video from you. You know, I've worked for many organizations, and we always have high-definition news-style video. And in all the cases, all the networks take it because those barriers to doing that are down.
Yeah, I always advise our students to, may sound crass, but do the homework for the journalist. If you've got a great story to tell and you can provide the visuals, the key facts, and sometimes even a third party to validate what you're saying, to contribute to a trend story, then you've done a tremendous amount of work for the reporter in helping sell it and, more importantly, helping produce it. But I'd like to transition a little bit from storytelling and relationship building to crisis communications. What recommendations do you have for developing a crisis communications plan and a social media readiness plan in advance of a crisis rather than waiting till the last minute and going, oh my gosh, we're in the Twitter sphere, what do we do?
Well, one thing is you need to get management to understand you have to be responsive and you have to be truthful. There's a word that also needs to be embraced passionately, and it's empathy. You always have to demonstrate empathy. But in advance of a crisis, well in advance of a crisis, just in talking with the C-suite people, your boss or whoever, say, you know, if we ever have a crisis, we need to have 3 messages. Now, I learned this years ago from Mike Deaver, who was Ronald Reagan's assistant deputy chief of staff at the White House. And the man was brilliant about messages. But he said you have 3 messages. You have one that's emotional, that really connects us as human beings, that people really hear and they say, yeah, I got it. Another one is logical. It only makes sense, what you're saying. And a third is analytical. It's backed up by data, it's backed up by facts and figures. Now, if you have 3 messages and you work those together, and these are not boilerplate things, they're not paragraphs, these are just sentences with plain language, very clear. Then you can weave those in and out, and you can show empathy, you can show concern, you can show involvement, you can create them within about 10 or 15 minutes of a crisis happening, because you get into that mindset and say, okay, a crisis has happened, let's come up with the 3 messages, and you can do it very quickly. And I'll tell you, it really works, because in a crisis situation, you don't want to go on long because you sound defensive. You want to just stick with a very short, hey, God, we're aware of this, we're really, really upset about it. Our reputation is of paramount importance, but more than that, we're concerned about other people, and say we have 14 teams out looking at this thing and teaming up with federal investigators, whatever it might be. I'm making that stuff up, but you see how it works, and then it's over. Period. You've said it. I can't think of how many times, you know, there's been some crisis, and a major corporation will just go silent. Radio silence for days, and you wonder, what's that all about? It's responsiveness. You got to get out ahead of it. If you can get out ahead of it, then you have the best chance of controlling it. We talked about manage, control, whatever it is, you can control it. A piece to that is take the news site for your company, your organization, off of that. If you have a corporation, XYZ Corporation, register to the domain of XYZ Corporation news.com or .org or whatever, and create that as the news site. Because I've talked with a lot of CEOs and they see 0 asset value in the news sections of their websites. It's because they view them as a graveyard for press releases. And they're not interactive, they're not bringing anything to the table. So create that, and then you can put crisis information there. Okay.
In your examples, you kept saying, you should do XYZ. You should be truthful. Is that you, the company spokesperson? Is it the CEO? Is it both? Who should be the lead in responding to a crisis?
I think the communications person should be the ombudsman in an organization. To take the lead. You should do that as an ombudsman, as a communications person, because a CEO's thinking about something else, the lawyers certainly are thinking about something else, technical people are distracted. It is the responsibility in a crisis of the communications person to be the conscience of an organization and to say, we have to get out there quickly. That's the only way we have a chance of managing this. We have to get out there very openly, and if this was our mistake, we have to say it. You know, you're not going to get sued any more or less by admitting a mistake. In fact, it might create that empathy we're looking for in among audiences. People might look upon you as saying, whoa, they really handled this well. And I think the communications person has a huge role to play, but backing up, it comes to establishing a seat at the table, and communications in this country doesn't have with rare occasions, a full seat at the table. Too often the decisions are made in an executive suite. They run down the hall and tell the communications people, this is what we want to do it. That's failure.
It's a good transition to ethics. It's Ethics Month for the Public Relations Society of America. On your davidhenderson.com website, you have the 7 principles of Arthur Page. Can you tell us a little bit about how ethics informs strategic communications?
I think it should be the soul of strategic communications. You should have openness and transparency and balance and accuracy. You should be truthful. And if somebody asks you to do any of those things, anything to the contrary, you should challenge it, and you should say that's wrong, and we're going to get in trouble, and here's why. I encourage everybody to learn the 7-page principles. Arthur Page, as it turns out, didn't actually say those 7-page principles, but they were derived from his writings. It was the way that he lived his life. He defined his brand truly by the way he walked and talked and acted, and I think that's the way we all should try to behave. But it was a very ethical way. And if you can't have an opportunity to join the Page Society, which is very expensive, at least you can embrace the principles that Arthur Page had, and I think try to transmit those throughout an organization, because they are really, really the foundation, the tenets upon which good communications is built.
Very good. Well, we are unfortunately out of time, so David, thank you so much for sharing your insights and wisdom with us, and I'm sure that our students will perhaps follow you on Twitter and maybe ask you some more questions directly. But thank you very much for your time. Greatly appreciate it.
They could email me anytime. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.